record this. All right, so let's go ahead and do my screen. Okay, there we go. So you should be able to see my presentation now. So this is how to provide feedback in critique groups presented by the Creative Writing Nook staff. All right. So just to give a little refresher, it is in the pinned messages of the Writing Circle channels, but we do have a little bit of rules, and there is a reason for these rules. So with the pages, uh, if you're going to be writing prose, so anything like short stories, novels, pretty much anything that's not poetry or scripts, up to 5 pages. You can go a little bit on the 6th page, but definitely not a 7th. And with poetry, you can do up to 3 poems because usually poems are short unless they're an epic. And if you are writing an epic, that's great, but you got to split it up a little just to make it easier for everyone to digest. And then with scripts, because they are formatted differently from, say, short stories, novellas, novels, we do allow 7 pages with a little going on to the 8th page, but definitely not a 9th page, just because sometimes you're like, oh, I need this one little line. That's perfectly fine. Just not anything too much, because if everyone starts doing 6 pages going to 7th page, then it's not going to be enough time for people to read through everything. The font, pick whatever you want. I really don't care, except for wingdings, because you can't read that and we have to translate it. So pretty much something legible that is easy to read, and about 11 to 13 point font. Just again, so it's easy to read. So we don't want 72-point font. We don't want 8-point font. And then with the line spacing, 1.5 spacing to double spaced, just to make it a little bit easier to see everything and read it. It also, like, it is a little archaic with pretty much like printed out copies like this, if my screen doesn't glare, so that people can put in line edits, but that still kind of translates over to a digital format too. So for the other rules that we have, for the criticism part of it, be courteous, number one rule. So you don't, you don't want people coming at you, attacking you, and everything. So be courteous, be nice, uh, provide constructive criticism. So we'll go over the different critic roles later, but you have to provide constructive criticism so that people can actually grow and improve. So, uh, and by constructive criticism, I mean nothing that's like, this sucks, stop writing. That's deconstructive criticism, so that's not allowed. So anything to help construct the work. And then some of the things that you should include in your critique is state what you like about the work, what you don't like about it, which usually what you don't like about it is stuff that's like that you see is wrong with it. Discuss the work with the author. We have chats for you to talk to people. You can DM the author. You can just do anything to talk to them. Sometimes putting comments on Google Docs can make the document lag because it's loading so many things. So you can chat in the chats. That's fine. And we also have the voice chats too that you can use to talk to the author if you want to. So just connect. I know Steve Ursawo was going to plan to do voice chats with everyone. So you can contact him about all of that, just so that we can all talk to each other and get criticism and feedback and everything. Because sometimes it's easier to do it through voice, sometimes it's easier to do it through text, whichever way you want to do it. So, and then some of the ways that you can provide fixes to problems is, just let them know the why that you're fixing it. Don't just say this is wrong, because they don't know why it's wrong and how they can fix it in the future, basically. So we're trying to construct stuff. So we don't want you to just say this is wrong. And also, whenever you are providing feedback to authors, do know that it is completely up to the author on whether or not they want to accept that feedback or not. That is up to them. That is perfectly okay. Like, I have someone that attends the writing group that I'm in, that's an in-person thing, and I don't listen to anything that they have to tell me. So that's on them, that's on me, but everyone else I usually listen to. But with what they suggest, I'm just like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. But again, it's up to the author to decide what they want to accept and what they deny, and that is perfectly okay. That is their decision to make. Whenever we are reviewing people's work, you need to review all of their work. So, not just the first page, not just the first couple pages, all of what they've posted. It's only fair because you're asking people to do the same thing for your work. So, whenever you're reviewing everything, review everything. And because we did kind of um, group up into technically one group, but it's still separate because of the genre channel. So you can pick and choose who you want to review. You do need to review at least 5 people's work. So you have a week to review everything. Ideally, if everyone posts everything on Sunday, which I know sometimes won't happen, they'll happen on Monday or Tuesday. You can review one person's work a day, and then you still have 2 days to not review people's work. So that's fairly easy, I think. At least doing one a day. Or you can just save it all to the end, like I am today, and reviewing everyone's work today. So, whichever works best for you. You can do one, you can do two. Just as long as you do 5, you're good. So, and then also, if multiple people have already commented on a document, you can read it. That's fine. But we would like for you to go to someone else's document and comment on it too, just to make it a little bit more fair. Because if everyone's congregating onto one document and other people aren't getting their work reviewed, it's still kind of unfair to do that. So, I mean, you can review everyone's work if you want. Like, no one's saying you can't do that, but you must review at least 5 people's work. So, it's pretty much what's fair, and that's what we're all about with this. And then, just to ensure that people have time to review everyone's work, uh, get it posted by no later than Thursday your time, because I know everyone's all over the world. So as long as it's in by Thursday, because I know I'm in a later time zone. I think me and Magnolia are in the same time zone, so we're going to be a lot later than everyone else. So you got plenty of time to post, considering where the day line is. Um, and again, in an ideal world, everyone would post on Sunday, and then that would give ample time. But I know life happens, which is why no later than Thursday. So, and just to make it easier so people know who you're reviewing, because I know we have a couple people in fantasy that have already posted their work, just to make it easy, just ping the person who you're reviewing so that they know you're reviewing their work. Or if you want to talk to them about it, you can leave the comments on the Google Doc. You can put it in the channel. Don't care either which way, just as long as we can see, yes, you are reviewing their work. And then when you're posting, anything that allows inline comments is good. I know Wattpad does allow inline comments, but we can't really track how many pages it is. But like, if we're scrolling through it forever, then I wouldn't post it. But if it's just like, if it's short, that's fine. But Google Docs usually works best. Microsoft Word or OneDrive usually works best. I know, Calvin, we were having some issues opening up your document. I think we can open it up on our phones versus our computers, but as long as we can open the document, that's good. So, and then pretty much just because we do want to make it fair, uh, if you don't review 5 members' work, or if you're caught plagiarizing other people's work, like if someone comes to staff saying, hey, I found my work on this other server and I only posted it in a circle, and they know who did it, we're going to boot you from the group. And if it's plagiarizing, especially, we're going to boot you from the server because that is not acceptable. That is not something we're going to tolerate. So just putting that out there. I think it's also in the server rules too. So that's not something we're going to play with at all, but especially if you aren't reviewing members' work and you posted something yourself, then I mean that's not fair basically. So we're just going to boot you from the group. If you want to come back and redeem yourself, that's perfectly okay, but you got to review people's work because you're asking people to review your work, so it's only fair. And then just because we also know that life happens, you cannot submit anything for 3 weeks out of the month. That's perfectly okay. If you only post something once a month, that's fine. But if you don't post anything for a full month, then we will remove you from the group. And if you're ready to come back and be like, yeah, I have all this stuff I want reviewed, we'll put you right back in. No problem. So, because I know I've added a couple members since we've started. I know I added one this morning, so they're not going to really be able to post anything, I don't think. But they've been reviewing work, so that's fine. And then again, I mentioned it in all of the writing circle channels. There are the recognizing constructive criticism versus deconstructive criticism document, as well as basically all of this in a document form. So just read over that so that you know what is constructive criticism, what is deconstructive criticism, and I'll show an example of that later too. And as always, if you have any questions, problems whatsoever, feel free to reach out to any member of staff. I know Sawo, Magnolia, and Jenny have posted for review. Isaac hasn't, but he's still in the channel, so you can talk to him. He knows everything about what we're doing in there, so he can answer questions too. So yeah, that is that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So I do know sometimes people confuse what a critique and what a beta read is, which we can technically beta read works if you're going to be here every single week and reviewing people's stuff and people are posting it every single week. Technically, that is kind of beta reading, but they are a little different. So beta reads are done by readers. So they point out what they liked, what they didn't like, and they look for possible plot holes. Uh, Basically, what a beta reader is if they just take a book right off the shelf and read it. That's basically what it is. Um, and then a critique is something that's more in depth and they're done from a writing perspective. They'll point out spelling, grammatical, punctuation mistakes, look for repetitive words and phrases, check sentence structure and syntax, if characters feel flat or do something out of character for no reason, and pretty much everything else that a beta reader does. So beta readers are mostly readers, not writers, and critiques are mostly writers, but I mean they can also do the beta read too, but there is a little bit of a difference. I know I had a beta reader for one of my books. She actually pointed out something that was wrong that my critique group and another beta reader didn't even pick up on. So I was like, oh, okay. So they both have their value to the writing process. So that's why I'm mentioning them. And technically, like I said, we can beta read as we're reviewing people's work too. So that's pretty much what those are. And then with the critiques, with critics, there are 3 different levels. So the harsh, Goldilocks, and gentle. So I know there a lot of people have a misconception about what a harsh critic is. They think that they're going to be like, this sucks, stop writing. And it's like, no, that's deconstructive criticism. Basically, a harsh critic, they're blunt about it. They don't beat around the bush with trying to get to the point. They just get to the point, tell you, yes, this is the mistake, and move on. I'm a harsh critic myself, so basically we don't take feelings into consideration when we're critiquing something. We just point out it's wrong and then go about our business. Some people think that a critique is a personal attack against them, and it's not. So that's something that is a skill to learn. That when people are critiquing your work, it's not a personal attack on you. I did have someone in my in-person critique group that I attend think that I was personally attacking her by pointing out, hey, you have these things that are wrong. And it was about prepositions. She ended a sentence with a preposition and she was writing something nonfiction. So I figured she wanted to know that that's not grammatically correct. And then on my document, she started pointing out anytime I used a preposition. Not that it was at the end of a sentence, but just anytime I used one. And she did that because it was a personal attack to me because I pointed out something on her document, which is why I stated before the author can choose to accept the criticism or not. That's one of the things I chose not to accept because she was just doing it because she was mad at me, which is fine. She's gotten over it, but that's just one of the things. Like, it's not a personal attack against you. I'm just pointing out that this is wrong. And then Goldilocks critics, or excuse me, gentle critics are the opposite. So they're more gentle with providing their critique, um, thinking more about how uh, the author would accept that critique. And they're better for beginner writers because it's easing their way into getting critiques and everything. Because sometimes harsh critics can scare people off. We don't mean to, but it happens. And then a Goldilocks critic is someone who's right in between. So they're not too harsh and they're not too gentle. They're right in the middle. Sometimes they can lean more towards one than the other, but they're still not fully a harsh critic and not fully a gentle critic. And with all that being said, no one critic is better than another. They all are beneficial to the writing process and they all serve their own purpose. So getting critiques from all levels of the critics is good and ideal. So I mean, yeah, you can ping for the critics whenever you're posting your work, but do also note other people are going to review it too. And they all have their own benefits, so that's basically what that is. All right. Oops, wrong way. Okay. So, some of the ways that you can provide feedback, like I mentioned earlier, is to point out grammar errors, uh, things like commas or semicolons, periods, quotation marks, exclamation marks, anything where it's like, wait a second, that's not right. You can highlight repetitive words and phrases in the whole piece or a small section, and then offer words to use in place of them. So I wouldn't just highlight all of the words. I would just at least offer, hey, you can say this instead because you use this phrase a lot. You can also point out something that doesn't make sense to you and explain why it doesn't make sense to you, because it could be a situation of the author thinks that they're presenting everything clearly when they're not. So if you're like, hey, I don't get this, I don't understand this, and the author explains it, you can work with them on trying to reword it so that it's easier to make sense or for them to get their point across the way that they intended. Another way to provide feedback is by correcting typos or incorrect usages of words. I do typos all the time, don't realize it. I've caught numbers in the middle of my words before. So that's something that you can point out, be like, hey, you spelled that word wrong. Another thing you can do is commenting on the flow of the work, like the pacing, if it's too fast, too slow, just right. Um, if some things aren't in the correct order, like if just the phrasing is flip flopped or something, for example. If there's not enough description or if there's too much description, if something adds to the story as a whole or not, if the piece is interesting or not. um, and pretty much if the piece makes you feel any kind of emotion, if you laughed about something, if you started tearing up at something that was said, that's feedback. Let them know, because that's also like a good thing too that you could mention, like one thing that you liked, be like, oh yes, I love this character, he made me laugh or she made me cry or something like that. That's feedback. So you can actually comment that and let the people know, because they might be like, yes, that's what I was going for. Or if it's the exact opposite, you're like, whoa, 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 why are you crying at this? That's not what I intended. So it can pretty much go any way. And pretty much anything that you have to say about it is feedback. And then, of course, Always offer suggestions on why to fix something. Don't just comment that it's wrong or incorrect. Explain why you're stating that it's wrong. And I'll show an example of that when I get to the piece, which is in a couple minutes. So, for our last slide, why is it important to provide feedback? So, in providing feedback to others, it helps them improve their craft, whether it's novels, short stories, scripts, or poems. The author may not know that something's wrong if they're not told that it's wrong. Just because we have the stories in our heads and it lives in our head for so long, so we know every little thing about it, and we think that we portray it the way that we intended to. But as soon as someone reads it and they get a different image in their head, and it's like, oh, I need to rework this so that they can see exactly what it was that I was intending to say with this piece. That's why we give feedback, so that everything can come out the way that the author intended it to. And also, people may not know how to fix what it is, that if they're not given a suggestion or explanation of how to fix it. For example, like just saying delete this or whatever. Oh, well, okay, why delete this thing? Oh, well, because it's unnecessary information, or it's incorrect because of this, that, or the other. Just explain it. Communication is key for a lot of things, because some people may not know that, hey, this is wrong and this is why it's wrong. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that that's why it was wrong. It can also help you identify problem areas in your own work, because you're looking at other people's work and you're like, oh, hey, they do this a lot. I do this a lot. And so it helps you identify things in your own work as you're reading over it too. And then also, in reading over their entire work rather than just a page or two, you are helping a fellow author grow and improve. And again, it's only fair to review the entire work because you're asking people to do the same for you too. So that's why we would do that. Okay, so that was the end of that presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and do an example of what feedback can look like. So let me, oops. All right. So our mod Ginny was kind enough to offer me a piece that I reviewed this morning. So just some examples of what you could do is this, and on her first paragraph, she used the same phrase essentially twice. So I highlighted that, and I offered the suggestion that she could condense the sentences because she's stating the same information twice in as many sentences. Another example that I did, and I had to go back over and read it again because it says James pulled out their clothes, and that was it. But if I go back up to the first paragraph, it says that James got up and opened the curtain to the patio. It doesn't say anything else about where he went. So I offered the suggestion, like, I know he's probably at a dresser or a suitcase or something, but I'm not told that he is. So sometimes you can infer things, but other times I'm like, wait a minute, what's he pulling clothes out of? Um, and then she used pulled or pulling 3 times close together. And on this third one, I offered the suggestion of her to use put instead, but then she uses put later on in the sentence. So then I was like, oh, hey, maybe you could use slipped instead. Um, just because I was like, oh, you already did it. So I'm offering feedback as I'm reading it instead of reading over it and then doing it. Another thing, with like wordiness in a sense, sometimes you can just condense stuff down and save on some words with a different way of saying something. Um, she used the same phrase kind of close together. So that's why I offered that suggestion on, instead of saying they made their way, they got in line or something like that, because they're at Disney in this piece. So there's lines everywhere. It's their most popular attraction. um, and then let's see. Just a couple other like little suggestions where I'm like, oh hey, I think this kind of phrasing would work better. Where her character Tara says about a household bot, it would make your life easier. Well, you could say it would make our lives easier, like just talking about a collective and not just specifically James. So that's just a little suggestion. She can accept it or she could not. I don't know. And again, I offered a suggestion of her to condense places or condense in places because of repetitive information. And oh, the meeting will end in 10 minutes. Okay. Um, just where she uses same phrases close together, like they decided, and really close together. I think for this one, she could just say they stopped for lunch instead of they decided to, because we already know they decided because they stopped. And plus, that would eliminate extra phrasing or another use of the same phrase where she has it right here. Like sometimes it's fine to just leave it, um, or some of them you can further change. Another one, uh, she had in this one sentence, it says, it was so hot outside. And I made the suggestion of just saying it was sweltering. It's a bit of a stronger description and it can eliminate some words by just saying it was sweltering. So they found an ice cream shop. That was totally amazing. Okay, well, how so? How is it amazing? I don't know. I can think of a bunch of different scenarios, but what's in my head may not match what's in her head. So that's an example of showing versus telling. So she's telling me it's amazing. She's not showing me how it's amazing. So I have it built up in my head what it looks like, and it might not match other people's examples of how it's amazing. So that was that suggestion for that. And then again, just condensing down repetitive information. So that's pretty much it when it comes to providing feedback. Um, Other than, one thing that I liked, and I mean, all the things that I disliked. But I mean, I've already read a lot of the stories, so she knows what I like about these characters. But in the writing circle chat, I would go in and tag her and be like, hey, read over your work. I thought this was funny. I liked this, that, and the other, and everything. And we just go about our business as usual with that, move on to the next person and review it. So, yeah, I think that is about it. So, we have about 8 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, I know some people were chatting, so I can pull that up and see. Yes, Magnolia did. She has a document too about accepting a critique and everything. She can post that in all of the channels and pin it too. So that could be helpful with people who are new to critiquing and everything, or people who have like a rejection sensitivity disorder, stuff like that. Let's see what else. What else? Let's see. For example, something like try adding quotation marks for dialogue as constructive criticism. Yes. So that would be considered constructive criticism, because if someone um, doesn't know how quotation marks work or something like that, you can show them, yes, use quotation marks here. I do know in different countries they have different punctuation rules and everything. So sometimes that can get a little lost, because in America we have, like, you use the double quotes, and in uh, England they have the single quotes for dialogue. So it just depends on where it is the norm for where they are. But yes, you can point out something like that too. Let's see. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, you can feel free to uh, message any members of staff or just talk to us in the chats and stuff like that. So yes, and Magnolia did bring up a good point. English is not everyone's first language, and that's why we want to be constructive and explain things, because some people may not know this is why it is in this whenever they're bringing everything in English. So We do have to be a little mindful of that too. And some of us who are native English speakers, they change the rules on us, so we don't know the rules for grammar and punctuation anymore. So yeah, um, like they changed the comma rules on me, and I'm trying to relearn how to do commas. Um, yeah, I think that is it. So I'm gonna work on getting this uploaded so that everyone can view it at their own leisure. And again, if you got any questions, let us know and we will answer them for you. So I hope this was as informative as it could be and that everyone has a nice day. And I'll see you around. Bye.